Let's get some more on this now. I'm joined live by political analyst Professor Susan Booysen. Thank you very much, Prof, for your time this evening. So what we got right there in the beginning, an admission that factionalism, amongst others, created a fertile ground for state capture. What did you make of the ANC president's testimony?
Yes, indeed. Overall, it was a performance of deft footwork a whole day long, and the president got quite exhausted at the end of the day. But we saw him tripping around literally a minefield of possibly implicating himself, possibly implicating any colleague in the ANC, and possibly incriminating the ANC as such. And he did that minimally. He was skillful in moving around that minefield. In the process, he did the approach of being submissive, defensive, my term there, in the sense of admitting guilt and saying that ANC could have gone further, could have done more, should have known better. He himself, in places, was the best example that he offered on specifics was himself, without mentioning other names. So he did well organizationally in terms of doing minimal damage, further damage to the ANC, but did confess quite frequently that the ANC did not do well. And of course, that does limit further incisive follow-up and penetrating questions. So as the strategic act, I think it was very good. Overall, in terms of substance, however, we know little more on what exactly went wrong. Except, for example, we do know that the deployment committee was really not up to scratch. It did too little, it did too much, people could bypass it. And so that's really a process that is in shambles.
And I want to talk about that policy. Clearly, as you indicate, the ANC president had presented what looked like an honest assessment of the failure of the ANC as the center of power to stop the rot. But can the ANC president exonerate himself? Because even when you start on the issue of the cadre deployment policy, I asked my colleague this a bit earlier on. He was Secretary General of the ANC when this policy was hatched.
Yes, he did. The policy actually, it was really necessary to be in full flight at this time when he was in charge of the policy. But the policy itself came actually much further, originated much further back, where the ANC really practiced it without having this by name, this policy by name. But it is really a case that much refinement should have been done much earlier, that there should have been safeguards in place to ensure that it does not go haywire, because so much of the ANC's power depends on how it exercises state power. And there should have been precautions. It was almost in many respects, and that also came before Ramaphosa was, although he did not put the stops to it when he possibly could have. But there were so many indications of things having gone off the wrong route, appointments being exploited, opportunism being in there. We can think back of the ANC's first National General Council in 1999. At that stage, I recall a briefing from that time that there was speculation, not just speculation, assessment, incisive assessment as to how cadres were joining the ANC for business opportunities and appointments were being made inappropriately. So it's a process that's come a very long way. And it remains to be seen. Much action, incisive action is required at this stage to stop that.
Should have been done, didn't happen, could have been done, didn't happen. Again, I want to refer to a powerful position of deputy president of the country. Some could argue he had access to the most powerful structures in the party, the National Working Committee, the NEC, and also on the side of government. Why did he then not break ranks with the former president, accused of allowing all of this to happen? Why didn't he do that instead of, like what you're saying now, appearing before the commission and saying, something should have happened, but it didn't. Why didn't he just break rank at the time?
Griselda, I think the big unspoken text narrative in today's expositions was that of deference to the president of the ANC. Over several presidencies of the ANC, we've seen that. And that is the culture in the ANC of accepting the wisdom of the big leader in the party. Perhaps it's much less so in the time of Ramaphosa now than it had been under the previous presidencies. But there is a question of not challenging the president and all that coterie of leaders around him. And Ramaphosa really complied with that. And he was, in a way, the unwanted, unpredicted deputy president that came in 2012 as deputy president to Zuma when Zuma was re-elected. And he knew he was not quite the welcome deputy president there. And he had to work within and this is not that it is good, but that was the only way to possibly become Zuma's successor. And that was to work within that, and at times, many occasions, actually not to challenge what was going on there. So it is really between a devil and a deep blue sea. Either you join and you play that game and make sure that there's a chance to, in a way, stop it or try to stop it by becoming the next president, or to challenge it in there and possibly be demolished, trampled on, and another candidate put in your place. So these are such intricate, tricky choices that he faced in there. And the question will always remain whether he actually took the right decisions at the time.
And that was my next question. We're fast running out of time, Prof. Booysen. But, I mean, isn't that exactly why the governing party finds itself in this particular position where you have the president of that party now at the Commission of Inquiry saying things should have happened, yet they didn't happen, but he was there and also did nothing?
Yes, and that goes right into the organizational culture of this former liberation movement, that it has to be freer internally, open internally, and much more open to various multiple forms of contestation inside, and not to accept that just leadership is right and has got the right to govern irrespectively.
Political analyst, Professor Susan Booysen, thank you very much for your insights this evening.